Hello and good evening. I'm Melisa Idris. Welcome to Consider This. This is the show where we want you to consider and then reconsider what you know of the news of the day. On September 7th, the Court of Appeal granted permission to cement manufacturer Associated Pan Malaysia Cement to evict Dhamma Sakyamuni Caves Monastery, a century-old Buddhist monastery in Gunung Kanthan, Perak. Joining us on the show tonight to help us understand why this is happening is Leong Cheok Keng. He is an advocate and solicitor, was part of the team representing the monastery and has also served as Assemblyperson for the Malim Nawar state constituency from 2013 to 2022. Leong, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I really appreciate your time. I'm hoping you can begin our conversation by giving us a little bit of background, a bit of context as to how the case ended up at the Court of Appeal and some of the key details and the timeline of this case.
The plaintiff, APMC, started to evict the occupants of Sayamuni Monastery by issuing a letter of eviction notice. Then that was the end of year 2020. After that, as the occupants did not comply with notice, a legal suit followed. That was in the beginning of 2021 in January. There are normally two ways of doing an eviction. So one is by way of a normal writ action. We call it civil action. And the other way is by way of a phrase that you would have heard many times in this case, which is order deny procedure. Why is it called order deny? Because it's an order of court, of the rules of court, regulating the summary procedure for eviction. Summary procedure meaning the action would just be what sometimes lawyers call it a trial by affidavit, meaning no witnesses are called to trial at court, merely by exchange of affidavits and written submissions, oral submissions in court, and the court decide whether the occupants are, these are technical words, squatters simpliciter. Maybe it means simply squatters, trespassers, and nothing more. And if the court find that they are squatters simpliciter, then they can be evicted by this procedure. And the defendants, in this case, the occupants, have no chance of going to court to ventilate their defense by way of a trial. And in this case, order deny was filed. High Court in early October, if I'm not wrong, 4th of October, dismissed the order deny application. And hence, it went up to Court of Appeal. The cement company took the matter up to appeal, and the appeal was indeed allowed by the Court of Appeal. On the 5th of September.
So the High Court ruled that that the monastery could stay, but it was overturned at the Court of Appeal. Is that accurate? Okay, all right. So Leong, help me understand. At the heart of the issue, is it essentially concern over who holds legal ownership of the land?
Yes and no. Because for every applicant under order deny, invariably they must be registered owner, in this case of a leasehold property. Whether freehold or leasehold, they must be the titled owner of the land. But it doesn't mean in every case the plaintiff will succeed under order deny. Otherwise, there's no need for a hearing in court. So what happened is that every applicant is a landowner, and invariably they will say that the defendants are squatters. And there are many cases where the defendants managed to show that they are not squatters. There's a very much used legal phrase, acquiescence. As long as the court finds that there is acquiescence, there's no need for express consent or license. The squatters, the occupants, are not considered squatters, and order deny would be defeated, and the court will say you go to a trial, and not order deny.
Okay, all right. So help me understand how we got to this point. So the Associated Pan Cement Malaysia (APMC) is a subsidiary of YTL Cement, and it was awarded a lease by the Perak state government back in the 60s. and the monastery has been there occupying the site for, as we've heard, for a century now. So was the company aware that the monastery was there? How did we end up till the point today where eviction is imminent?
Okay, according to the affidavit in support of the application, the companies at the beginning say that they were not aware of the monastery or the structure or the occupants. Of course, the monastery say otherwise. They say that there have been engagement, there have been meetings, there have been assurance, and so on. But this is, of course, to the merits of the case. But all I can say is that the High Court actually agreed with the monastery submission that it cannot be that they are not aware of the monastery. And in fact, the High Court agreed with the monastery submission that there has been suppression of evidence, suppressing the knowledge that the monastery has been there. But of course, I must be quick to add that the Court of Appeal disagreed with the High Court on this point.
Okay. I understand that this is all this is the Court of Appeal's decision, but can we move to the role of the state government in all of this? What specific actions or inactions by the state government do you believe have led to this outcome?
Okay, what happened is this. Maybe I should not mention the name, but there's an former ESCO during the Barisan Nasional time told the monastery that the lease would not be extended when it expired in 2019. However, the lease was extended, and after that, what the government did, I mean, actually there was nothing more to be done. After the lease was extended, APMC got their extra 30 years. And maybe I can add a little bit of input from my part is that when monastery approached me, I did, when I was the state assemblyman, although it was not in my constituency, is in the constituency of actually our Yang Amat Muhammad Prime Minister, Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim in Tambun. So my constituency is under the Parliament Constitution of Ampar, but never...
But you were in the State Legislative Assembly in 2019. You were part of you were in Adun. So how did this also happen under your watch, Leong?
Yeah, actually it's through common friends and common lawyer friends that it has come to my attention. And since I'm also a Perak assemblyman and not just being Malim Nawar, I thought I'd better take the matter up. And the request was quite simple. They recruited me to the legal team. Plus, they say since I'm in the State Assembly, I might as well also help by other ways, which I did, which is to raise a written question in the State Assembly, asking the state government whether they would support the idea of an application by the monastery to be a heritage site. And the answer was actually, written answer was actually very encouraging. I remember he used the word supportive, alu-alukan in Bahasa, mengalu-alukan, which is welcoming the effort of the monastery. The state was very positive in the written answer, and it was followed by my request to MBI, which is the Majlis Bandaraya Ipoh, the Ipoh Council, which also says that alu-alukan. I remember very clearly the words used, and because I was very encouraged having read it.
What does it mean to gazette it as a heritage site? What would that entail?
I think it would necessarily mean that it cannot be blasted. It must be kept in the status quo, meaning the Gunung Kanthan would be preserved for its biodiversity and so on. Of course, I must be truthful to say that it does not mean that maybe the monastery can still carry on their usual activities there. That is another separate question. Yeah. But we know that it will be preserved and not be blasted away by quarry activities. Yeah.
Okay, so help me also understand. So Gunung Kanthan is part of the geoparks, right? The Kinta Valley National Geoparks meaning that it is an area of significant geoheritage. So is this a likelihood that the Office of the Menteri Besar, that the Perak State Legislative Assembly might consider gazetting this site as a heritage site, as a geoheritage site? But what implications would that mean for the renewed 30-year concession to the to APMC, to the cement company?
I think it's just like any other heritage gazette. Even if you own a building, let's say in Georgetown or Malacca, you cannot do as you want it, right? I mean, you usually, let's say the facade must always be preserved and so on. And in this case, if the Gunung Kanthan is going to be preserved and gazetted as a heritage site, I'm pretty sure that even if you are the leasehold property owner, you cannot touch it. You cannot carry out quarry activities. That's for sure. There's the most harmful to a heritage site, I'm sure. So I think, ironically, the landowner would just have to bear with having a little portion of his property that he cannot use for his commercial purposes.
Right. So as you mentioned earlier, if it is gazetted as a heritage site, it does not necessarily mean that the monastery can continue operating, because it's all about also licensing and the leasing issues. Can I ask you, Leong, is it feasible then to think about relocating the monastery to, is that a feasible alternative? Or are there religious and historical significances about the site that we have to take into consideration?
Okay, according to the abbot and the other devotees, they would never in their life leave the monastery because of the long history attached with the monastery, and the fact that their founder repeated to me many times this wonderful story of the founder having walked all the way from Thailand to in his vision, he saw this place as being the best place for meditation, and he founded this place. And you know how it passes from one generation to another. So the current occupants say that they need to preserve the religious practice, the religious heritage that they inherited, the statues, the artifacts, and so on. So they have made it very clear that it's not about money, but spiritual practice. Is not about temporal well-being. It's about spiritual well-being, and hence they have made it very clear. And I find it very difficult to ask these monks to go to another place. Yeah, because to them this is the only place, the best place for meditation. Yeah, that their founder instructed them to carry on.
Are there so what's next? What can we hope? Can we keep an eye out for next? Are there avenues for seeking redress, either through the legal process or through petitions? As you mentioned, I hadn't realized that Gunung Kanthan falls under the parliamentary constituency of Tambun, which is the seat of the Prime Minister.
Yes, yeah. Politically, the state government just announced that they have formed a special task force committee to look into the matters, to seek a win-win situation, I suppose. And a letter has been written by the abbot to the Prime Minister, and I think is already on the way. And hopefully, after reading the letter, Prime Minister can, in his wisdom, come up with a palatable solution to all. There is politics, and state government is doing their part. I'm very encouraged by the Menteri Besar to say that a committee has been set up, and one of the ESCO, YBC One is heading the committee. I think he's in charge of national integrity issues. Legally, we have not given up. There's a final level of appeal. Uphill task, no doubt, but we are going to file an application for leave to appeal, because in civil cases, there's no appeal as of right to the federal court. So it must go through a two-stage procedure, first being a leave application, what we call the application for leave to appeal. And if we succeed at that, then there'll be an appeal proper. On the other hand, there'll be an application for stay of execution, meaning that the execution of the eviction order if we succeed in the stay application, would be withheld until the outcome of the application for leave. Yeah.
Okay. When you mentioned seeking, the state government is seeking a win-win scenario, what would that look like, in your opinion?
Yeah, I cannot interpret on behalf of the abbot, but to me, I think what the abbot means is that, if you allow me to use a layman kind of language, is you don't kacau me, I don't kacau you, and you carry on with your commercial activities, but can you just reserve that little portion, the very little portion of Gunung Kanthan, to allow the abbot to continue their religious practice, and meditation and so on. Just that portion, of course, involves sacrifice and maybe CSR on the part of corporate social responsibility on the part of the cement company. But the abbot, I think, would very humbly plead for mercy if legally still the cement company is the winner at the end. I think they would say, can we look at humanitarian ground? Can we look at environmental issues, biodiversity, flora and fauna? Apparently, there are many species and subspecies of plants and animals, flora and fauna, that cannot be found anywhere else in the world. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank
you so much for speaking with me today. That was Leong Cheok Keng, who is a lawyer, part of the legal team representing the monastery, also former Malim Nawar Assemblyperson in Perak. We're going to take a very quick break here and consider this. We'll be back with more. Stay tuned. Hi, welcome back to Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris. We've been discussing the Court of Appeal's recent decision to grant permission to the Associated Pan Malaysia Cement to evict a century-old Buddhist monastery situated in Gunung Kanthan, Perak. But also at stake in Quarrying Gunung Kanthan is a 5 million-year-old limestone hill which has ecological, geological, archaeological heritage. Joining us on the show now to tell us more about the urgency in protecting and preserving Gunung Kanthan is Dr Ros Fatihah Muhammad. She's the president of the Malaysian Cave and Karst Conservancy, and she's also a senior lecturer at University Malaya's Department of Geology. Dr Ros, thank you for being on the show with me today. Could you begin our conversation by maybe describing a little bit about the unique geological features of Gunung Kanthan? Why is it considered a significant geo-heritage site?
Okay, but first, Melisa, thanks for having me here today. Okay, so Gunung Kanthan is part of the what I call as Kinta Karst. Okay, so Karst is basically landscapes that has been formed mainly by a type of a rock, which is limestone. So Gunung Kanthan is only part of hills, karst hills in Kinta Valley, which made up only a small number of the whole karst areas in the valley, and even in Peninsular Malaysia. So basically, from my study, the karst hills in Perak is only about 7% of the whole of limestone in Perak. So it's only about 7%. What you see on the surface is only 7%, while the rest of them is underground. Okay, so in this 7% of the limestone, you have numerous caves, and in caves, you have lots of diversity of fauna, flora, and on the hill itself, you have various species, and a lot of them are also endemic, to certain hills. And due to this uniqueness of the landscape, they also provide aesthetic values, attractions to visitors. So Gunung Kanthan is only part of it. It's only part of this. And if I want to talk about how important the landscape is, so you imagine the host rock. So if you find fossils in there, you find fossils that are hundreds of millions of years. But when you go into caves, caves are considered as young landscape, younger landscape. So the young landscape of caves can actually preserve another set of fossils. So you may get to have young fossils in the caves. So within a small area, you get to have fossils from the age of hundreds of millions of years to maybe only a few thousand years. So that long history of geology or paleontology is preserved in caves. So when I go back, if you allow me to go back to Kanthan, so I would like to share with you in terms of fossils, we have fossils of orangutan, bats, leaf monkey, pig, porcupines, and also a finding from Malaysian Nature Society extinct sea lilies even, okay? And then on top of that, we have endemic animals such as trapdoor spider or bent-toed gecko, okay? And Kanthan also have high diversity of snails, okay? So snails only has 63 species, okay? And 7 can be found endemic to Gunung Kanthan, right? Plants, we have more than 200 plants, according to Dr. Ros, and 30% of these are endemic, okay?
Okay. Dr. Ros, so you're telling me that this clearly has, vast biodiversity importance, ecologically important, also geologically and archaeologically important. Can I ask you then, I've been reading news reports that it says almost 80% of the area has already been destroyed. I'm not quite sure how bad the damage is to Gunung Kanthan, but what do we have left? Is that worth preserving, or has too much already been destroyed?
Okay, I am also not very sure of how many percent left, but if you mention 80% has been extracted out, I think that's reasonable, because according to my research, I have looked at aerial photographs from the 1960s. Gunung Kanthan was actually 2 caves that has been separated by a narrow valley, okay, in the middle. So the whole of the middle has gone, basically. So what we have is a rim around the original landscape. Definitely, in my opinion, definitely there are still important flora and fauna, and even the fossils, okay, that are still preserved in these small areas left behind by the quarry.
So what do you think should be done next? Well, as president of the Malaysian Cave and Karst Conservancy, what would you like to see taken at a policy, at a regulatory level, to better protect sites like the Gunung Kanthan site?
Okay, in my opinion, okay, studies or research is of utmost importance, okay? So before we do anything, before we even plan to conserve, we must have a look at the whole landscape in multidisciplinary angles, okay? So for example, I'm in the opinion that proper in situ conservation strategies and also consultation with experts with impact from the construction taken into consideration, and look at the balance, between activities for tourism. Okay, so in my opinion, even if you want to involve this landscape for tourism, thorough study has to be done, okay? And also we must also look at periodically thorough checks, on the conditions of the Karst heritage and also preparedness for remedial action if there are any impacts from any activities. Okay. And the more important thing, in my opinion, is proper and clear zonation planning on the conservation site. And we must actually put a clear definition on the core zones and also the buffer areas. Okay. And definitely thorough management of specific sites and also allocation of proper resources for the management and also enforcement for this invaluable Karst heritage.
Okay, so it's not too late to save Gunung Kanthan.
It's not too late. And what we have, in my opinion, is what studies that a lot of people done is actually a little, only probably the eyes of the, what do you call it?
The tip of the iceberg.
Tip of the iceberg.
All right.
So
Thank you so
there are
much.
many more to do, So yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Ros Fatihah Muhammad from the Malaysian Cave and Karst Conservancy, wrapping up this episode of Consider This. I'm Melisa Idris, signing off for the evening. Thank you so much for watching, and good night.